morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to our weekly review of how religion impacts humanity. This week's headlines. A Canadian priest slams the pitiful lack of Catholic fundraising for residential school survivors. A 14-year-old boy gunned down his mother in Pakistan. TikTok is banned in Pakistan for promoting LGBTQ. The Malaysian Government steps up attacks on LGBT people. A Pew survey says most Indians oppose interfaith marriage. In Georgia, a cameraman died after an attack at an anti-Pride march. The Irish Methodist Church will not permit same-sex marriages. The UK National Secular Society welcomes plans to ban virginity testing. And a new bill is tabled in Pakistan to protect girls of minority religions. We start with some news from Canada, which is delivered by our correspondent, David Rand.
A Canadian Catholic priest is speaking out against his own church, saying he's ashamed that it used a legal loophole to escape its $25 million promise to residential school survivors. It's scandalous, really shameful, said Saskatoon priest and Order of Canada recipient André Poilievre. It was a loophole. It might be legal, but it's not ethical. In the landmark 2005 Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement, the Catholic Church first agreed to make a lump $29 million cash payment and did pay most of that. It also agreed to provide $25 million of in-kind services. Officials say that was fulfilled, although the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops declined to provide a list of those services to CBC News. Some critics also questioned why the perpetrator was allowed to provide in-kind services to the victims. The Third Catholic Church promise was to give its best efforts at fundraising $25 million for survivors. After a decade, more than $21 million of that fundraising commitment remains unpaid. All other churches involved in the settlement, United, Anglican, and Presbyterian, paid their full shares without incident. Several years after the settlement, the federal government asked the church to pay. The church's legal team instead went to court and pointed to the best efforts clause, saying the church had tried its best. On July 16, 2015, a judge agreed and absolved the church of its legal obligation. In an interview, Poilievre said he was disgusted with the church's meager fundraising effort, the unethical legal maneuvering to get out of it, and the fact that more than $290 million was committed to cathedral and church construction across Canada during this time. It's pitiful, he said. I think money should be spent on people first and buildings and cathedrals last. This is David Rand reporting from Canada.
Thank you, David. A 14-year-old boy in Pakistan, shown in green on this map, shot and killed his mother for the honor of the family. This report is from Harris Sultan.
Have a look at this news story. You're not going to believe this. This is how toxic this honor culture is. 14-year-old guns down his mother in Swabi court. Swabi is a northern province, a city town in a northern province of Pakistan, which is the most conservative. Mostly Pashtuns live there. Very conservative, very tribalistic kind of a society. And the story goes, a 14-year-old boy gunned down his own mother in the name of honor outside a court in Swabi district of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Registering an FII in the case, Constable Hazrat Bilal told the police that Nasihat Bibi, the wife of Zubir resident of Naranji village, had been brought to court for the hearing of her case, where she was granted bail by the court. So after the bail, she was sitting in a veranda with a lady constable waiting for the documents when the incident happened. He said that during this time, a young man approached her and then opened fire at her, killing her on the spot. The young boy, who is the son of the deceased, escaped, but police chased him and arrested him along with the pistol red-handed. Her husband, Zubair, lodged an FIR, which is the first information report with the police, on May 25th, blaming that his wife eloped with her friend, Shad Ali. Later, police arrested the couple and Nasihat Bibi was shifted to a shelter house while her second husband, Shad Ali, was sent to jail. So, and this is why this honor culture is so bad, ignoring the fact that her son murdered her. But even before that, why were they arrested? Yes, she was married and now she ran away. And this is why divorces should happen on no fault basis, meaning, and this is why, Western world, I'm sorry, is superior to these primitive societies. If a wife or a husband say, well, sorry, honey, not working out, I like that guy more than you, I'm going to leave you for him. It's like, oh, that, it really hurts me, honey, but if you don't love me, you don't love me. So, okay, go. But no, that's not how it works. You should be living in a society where you should be free to walk out. Relationship is voluntary. These kind of relationships, romantic relationships, are voluntary. And if you are not happy for whatever reason, you should be able to walk away. Her own son ending up killing her. So police said the accused was a juvenile of just 14 years and his father encouraged him to kill his mother in the name of honor. Just imagine how toxic this religion is, that he brainwashed his 14-year-old son and somehow convinced him that to protect the honor of the family, he needs to go and kill his own mother. And he actually did it.
Still in Pakistan, TikTok has been banned for supporting LGBTQ Pride Week. Here's Harris again.
Pakistani court banned TikTok. They banned TikTok because it is celebrating LGBTQ Pride Month. Well, they're saying that on TikTok you can't celebrate LGBTQ people. You can't, because if you do, that is insult to Islam. So that's the premise, and they banned TikTok. But there are some people in Pakistan who see the absurdity of the entire society. I mean, down right from the very top to the prime minister, to the courts, to the private businesses, down to a young child. Everything is dysfunctional in Pakistan now. And again, it wasn't like that, people. It started from 70s and then definitely gained momentum in the 80s. And now we're just in the middle of it. Our grandparents tell us in the 40s and the 50s and 60s, Pakistan was very different. Very, very different. Totally opposite to this. And again, I blame Islam. All of these things that started happening, all of them happened in the name of Islam. And yes, any child can find references from the Quran against LGBTQ community, against working of women, against giving bodily autonomy to women. All of these references, wife beating, all of polygamy, all of this can be found directly from the Quran. So anyway, this minister, he's the information minister, was recently, he moved from the science and technology ministry to information minister. He goes, judicial activism has cost Pakistan billions of dollars. And in the past, it's happened already. When they banned YouTube, they lost money. When they banned Facebook, they lost money. Judiciary is not supposed to be doing this. So he said, my head is spinning after reading the decision to ban TikTok and remove the NBP president. That's irrelevant. What are our courts doing? The country has already suffered losses worth billions of dollars to judicial activism, the minister said.
Thank you, Harris. I'll put a link to your channel in the description. Now, Human Rights Watch said today that the Malaysian government should renounce a cabinet minister's proposal to increase criminal penalties against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people. The attempt to strengthen criminal penalties against LGBT Malaysians is the latest in a series of moves to cement the anti-LGBT, anti-human rights stance of Prime Minister Yassin's national government. Here he is. The proposed amendment, submitted by Ahmad Marzak Shari, Deputy Minister for Religious Affairs in the Prime Minister's Department, would allow state Sharia courts to establish harsher sentences for same-sex conduct than the current maximum sentence permitted under federal law. Marzak also proposed codifying as Sharia criminal offences changing one's gender and producing or sharing social media content deemed obscene and indecent, including images of non-normative gender expression. Malaysia's state and federal statutes that criminalise LGBT people are already out of bounds with regard to international law, and the government seems to be sinking even deeper in its disregard for human rights, said Neela Ghoshal, Associate LGBT Rights Director at the Human Rights Watch. Rather than enhance penalties for actions that harm no one, the government should repeal such penalties. Malaysia's state Sharia laws, which punish consensual same-sex relationships as well as gender nonconformity, are among the many laws and policies in Malaysia that discriminate against LGBT people. Malaysia's Federal Penal Code covers most criminal acts in the entire country, and state Sharia laws enforced by state Islamic religious departments and tried in Sharia courts are only applicable to Muslims, who make up about 60% of Malaysia's population. All 13 states and the Federal Territory criminalise same-sex relations and gender nonconformity. In addition, Section 377 of the Federal Penal Code punishes any form of anal or oral sex with up to 20 years in prison and mandatory caning. Most Indians see themselves and their country as religiously tolerant, but are against interfaith marriage, a survey from the Pew Research Centre has found. People across different faiths in the country said stopping interfaith marriage was a high priority for them. The research comes after laws were introduced in several Indian states criminalising interfaith love. According to the survey, 80% of the Muslims who were interviewed felt it was important to stop people from their community from marrying into another religion, and around 65% of Hindus felt the same way. The survey also asked about the relationship between faith and nationality. It found that Hindus tend to see their religious identity and Indian national identity as closely intertwined. Nearly 2/3 of Hindus said it was very important to be Hindu in order to be truly Indian. The study found that despite sharing certain values and religious beliefs, members of India's major religious communities often don't feel they have much in common. Indians simultaneously express enthusiasm for religious tolerance and a consistent preference for keeping their religious communities in segregated spheres. They live together separately, the study said. Many lead religiously segregated lives, it added, when it comes to friendships, and would prefer to keep people of certain religions out of their residential areas or villages. Marriages between Hindus and Muslims have long attracted censure in conservative Indian families, but couples are also facing legal hurdles now. India's Special Marriage Act mandates a 30-day notice period for interfaith couples, and some Indian states, led by the governing Bharatiya Janata Party, BJP, have taken further steps, introducing laws which ban unlawful conversion by force or fraudulent means. It is in response to what right-wing Hindu groups call love jihad, a theory that accuses Muslim men of luring Hindu women with the sole purpose of converting them to Islam. Police in Georgia have launched a criminal investigation into the death of a cameraman who was attacked while covering an anti-Pride event. Lekso Lashkarava suffered severe facial injuries during the attack in Tbilisi on the 5th of July, but was discharged from hospital. Then he was found dead on Sunday. The Georgian Interior Minister, Mr. Garibashvili, said 4 people have been arrested. The Pride was called off on Monday after violent groups targeted the offices of LGBT campaigners. While discrimination against sexual orientation is illegal in Georgia, the country, which lies between Eastern Europe and Western Asia, remains very conservative. Lashkarava was attacked by anti-LGBT protesters who were demonstrating against the planned Pride events. He was one of more than 50 journalists attacked on that day. Lashkarava's editor at TV Perveli said the cameraman had complained of severe pain when he saw him on Friday. An official cause of death has not been announced yet. Georgia's Interior Minister has announced that it has launched a criminal investigation. Activists had organised 5 days of Pride events, but in a statement on Monday, Tbilisi Pride said local authorities had not only failed to secure safety of the queer community and our supporters, but actively hampered us from exercising the right of assembly. Georgia's Interior Ministry had previously called on the organisers to cancel the Pride March due to safety concerns, while Mr. Garibashvili described the event as unacceptable for a large segment of the Georgian society. The Georgian Orthodox Church, which strongly opposes LGBT activists, had also called for a public prayer meeting against the Pride event. It's not the first time that there has been violence at an anti-LGBT march. In 2019, far-right protesters joined demonstrations against the premiere in Tbilisi of Georgia's first LGBTQ film. The Methodist Church in Ireland says it will continue to only permit marriages between a man and a woman. This follows the Methodist Church in Britain voting on Wednesday to allow same-sex marriages. We reported on that last week. The General Secretary of the Methodist Church in Ireland said the decision in Britain was made after years of reflection, but the Methodist Church in Ireland is a separate and autonomous body which continues to affirm that marriage is between one man and one woman, said Reverend Dr. Heather Morris. We too continue to deliberate on these issues, deeply mindful that this is an area on which Christians disagree, and that this deliberation profoundly affects the lives of many people within and beyond the Church. The first same-sex religious wedding in Northern Ireland took place in December, after changes in the law were introduced by the Northern Ireland Office. The UK National Secular Society has welcomed plans to ban virginity testing to protect women and girls from violence and exploitation. Measures to outlaw virginity testing in England and Wales have been tabled as a clause in the Health and Care Bill, with backing from the Department of Health and Social Care. The bill is now at the committee stage. It would also ban so-called virginity repair procedures. So-called virginity testing is an unscientific procedure involving an intrusive examination to assess whether the hymen is intact. The hymen can tear for many reasons other than sexual intercourse, including tampon use and exercise. Virginity repair procedures involve constructing a layer of skin at the entrance to the vagina to create the illusion of an unbroken hymen. The World Health Organization says virginity is a social, cultural, and religious construct with neither medical nor scientific basis. Many women from Muslim backgrounds are at risk of so-called honor violence if their spouses or families believe they have had sex before marriage. Women's rights campaigners say clinics offering virginity repair are profiting from women who are afraid for their safety. Karma Nirvana, a campaigning charity, said their callers included women who were coerced into virginity tests before marriage and rape victims forced into virginity repair. The National Secular Society recommended a ban on virginity testing in its response to a government consultation on women's health back in April. Now, unusually, some potentially good news from Pakistan. Here's Harris again.
Been talking about minorities for a very long time, and I'm starting to see a slight light at the end of the tunnel. Just a little bit. Nothing to be overly excited about, but just something to be hopeful about. Actually, no, there was a speech in the Sindh Assembly, which is down south where this issue happens the most, where actually, no, I don't think it happens the most. It just happens the most to Hindus, and in Punjab it happens to Christians. One of the minority non-Muslim reserved member of the parliament, this guy spoke about it, and he said, well, why is it happening that in our country our minority girls are not safe? We need to protect them. They're being abducted and converted to Islam and they're married off. A person from Imran Khan's party also said the same. Now he's saying that Imran Khan's party would support it. He said, we have a governor in Sindh and we will sign that bill. Or he's supposed to be saying that no girls under the ages of 18, it's already a law that you cannot marry a girl under the ages of 16 or a boy who's under the ages of 18. It's already a law, but because of Islam, it's never implemented. So even Muslim girls are sometimes married off at the ages of 12, 13. But Christians and Hindus should be protected by that law, but they're not. So the new law basically says that under the ages of 18, you can't even change your religion. So it's like a double kind of protection for them. A, you can't even be married. But secondly, you can't even change your religion. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter how much you want to change your religion. Under the ages of 18, you can't do it. So I think that's the main part of that bill that's been attempted to be passed through the Sindh Assembly, but it's been rejected 3 times. So hopefully next time when it's put in, it might be it might go through and it might be successful, because these kind of stories are that this is from the last week. This 13-year-old girl, Anika Meghavari, she was a Hindu girl married off to this guy on the right. Yes, he's not her father. He's a new husband.
Stay tuned on this channel for the live Q&A show Free Thought Hour with singer-songwriter campaigner Fernando de Oliveira Lucio from Brazil, starting in a few minutes. I had to record this earlier today to fit in with our guest, but you should still be able to comment live. In case you've never seen Free Thought Hour, here is a short clip from last week's show.
Now,
Okay.
if you're gonna ask kind of globally, like, why would the God of the universe care, where you stick your junk? Well,
Yes.
I think because it matters to who we are, and it matters to the telos that God has for us. And so in that case, we would want to know how we were designed. And that's one of those things, I think, on all things where it gets mixed up, where some people say, oh, because that's the Christian teaching, I have to do that too, even though I'm not a Christian. And I would say, no, not necessarily. I mean, there could be some, ancillary benefits to that personally, but really the if you love me, you will follow my commands. The subject to that is if you love me. The first part of that is if you love me. If you don't, then you don't have to follow the commands. Now, again, there may be other reasons that you do follow some of those commands. There may be other reasons that you do act in line with some of Jesus' teachings, but it's not because you love him.
Okay, so you haven't demonstrated to me what business it is of any God to interfere with our reproductive techniques, which, of course, if we didn't carry out, we would have long gone extinct. However, do you know the story of the Emperor's New Clothes?
Yes.
It was a very vain emperor and some cunning tailors who allegedly made him some fine clothes that were actually invisible, and only the wise would be able to see them. And he went, they were invisible, they weren't real, and he went parading down the street, and everybody didn't want to appear not to be wise, so they said, what wonderful clothes the emperor is wearing, except for this small boy who pointed out that he was naked. Now that seems to me what you're doing, because you're telling me what your God wants. He wants to love us. He wants us to be careful about where we put our junk and this, that, and the other. That he wants us to worship him on Sundays, so on and so forth. He's got a special celebratory time at the end of the year called Christmas, what you haven't shown to me is that he exists. So you're doing, the emperor has got the Emperor's New Clothes backwards. You're telling me all about the clothes, and the emperor is invisible.
Well, okay.
We will be back with our weekly news review on all our platforms at the same time next week. Please like, subscribe, share, comment, set the notifications, etc. Thank you for watching.